Without any warning, I got the news that my mother-in-law had passed away. Naturally, I wanted to attend the funeral, but my husband yelled at me. "Don't you dare come, do you understand? What kind of daughter-in-law wouldn't go to the funeral? My mom hated you. Don't even think about showing up, you'll just be a nuisance." Although my relationship with my mother-in-law was never close, she was still gone, and not attending the funeral as her daughter-in-law felt very disrespectful. Ignoring my husband's words, I decided to go to the funeral home, even though it was a bit far away. When I arrived, I saw my husband leading the mourning rituals. Wait, what's going on here? Whose funeral is this? What I discovered next was a shocking truth that was hard to believe. My name is Sophia. I'm 30 years old, and I've been married to my husband William for 3 years. Things were good back then, but not anymore. I won't sugarcoat it, I'm not happy with my marriage. The main problem is my husband. I became a housewife after we got married because when he proposed, he asked me to quit my job and stay home. Since I was just an office worker without much passion for my job, I agreed and quit, but that was a mistake. In the first year of our marriage, things were relatively fine, but in the second year, things changed. I used to get $11,000 a month from my husband for living expenses, but suddenly it was cut down to $500. "William, making ends meet with just $500 is impossible," I said. "I'm covering the rent. All you have to worry about is utilities and groceries, right?" he replied. But even for basic household items, $500 wasn't enough, especially when you consider utilities and food. "You're supposed to make it work, aren't you? You're living on my income, so figure it out," he said. In the end, he wouldn't budge, so I had no choice but to make do with the $500, no matter how hard it was. My husband eats more than the average person, which makes things even harder. After a year of living off my savings, I watched my balance shrink steadily since I had no income. Every time I checked, the number got smaller and smaller, and it filled me with a deep sense of dread. What will happen to me when the account hits zero? $500 just isn't enough, no matter how hard I try. William shows no signs of increasing the household budget. What am I supposed to do? That's when I decided it was time to go back to work. Even if I could only find a part-time job, I might be able to earn between $800 and $900 a month, which would make life easier. That night, when I suggested the idea to my husband, he reacted strongly, almost in shock. "Work? You can't be serious." "No way," he said. "Why not? It would give us more breathing room," I replied. "If life is tough, it's because you're bad at budgeting. It's your fault," he shot back. "I've done all I can, but life is still hard. That's why I've been considering other options." Playing the victim. "Huh? You only live because of me. How dare you even suggest that?" His dismissive tone fueled my growing anger, and before I knew it, I was yelling at him louder than I ever thought I could. "Enough is enough. You're the one who wanted me to be a housewife. Since when does yelling solve anything? I just want you to understand, how can anyone make ends meet with just $500? Shut up. Stop blaming others and figure something else out. You loser," he spat, pushing me aside and storming out of the living room. I fell to the floor, tears streaming down my face. Why is this happening? All I wanted was a peaceful married life. I always felt the need to talk to someone about my worries, but my parents live far away, and visiting them isn't easy. I couldn't stay silent anymore, so I tried to talk things out. On the other hand, my in-laws live only an hour away by car, but my husband doesn't get along with them, so we've had no contact with them since we got married. Talking to my in-laws was pretty much out of the question. After getting married, I moved closer to my husband's workplace, making it difficult and expensive to meet up with my old friends. As for my friends back home, I can only imagine what they'd say if I tried to meet up with them. So here I was, living in fear of my own husband. Then, things started to change. Recently, my husband has been spending less time at home. He started working late and going on more business trips, so he's rarely home for dinner. If he's not eating at home, I don't need to buy as many groceries, which helps me manage with the $500 he gives me each month. Also, I've started working from home and now make about $700 a month. I've begun enjoying a more independent lifestyle, especially when he's not around, and this has been going on for about a year now. Lately, My husband has been too busy with work to come home much, but when he does, he treats me terribly and shouts insults at me. Recently, he hasn't even been giving me any money for living expenses. Then one day, something unexpected happened. When my husband came home from work, he seemed really shaken. Without any warning, he blurted out, "My mom is dead." "Wait, what? Are you joking?" I asked, stunned. "Why would I lie about something like this?" he yelled back. "But your mom was still young. I'll go to the funeral with you the day after tomorrow," I said. He caught me off guard with his response. "No, you stay here." "What do you mean? Why would you go alone to your mother's funeral?" I asked, confused. "She's my mom, so I should be the one to go. You don't need to come," he said. "Wait a minute, that's ridiculous. She's my mother-in-law too," I protested. "That doesn't matter. I'm enough for my mom's funeral," he insisted. "Are you serious?" I couldn't understand his reasoning, and my frustration grew. His impatience was obvious as he said, "Just don't come to the funeral, got it?" "What are you talking about? What kind of daughter-in-law doesn't attend her mother-in-law's funeral?" "Enough, Mom hated you, okay? Just don't show up at the funeral." "What, my mother-in-law hated me?" "Yes, exactly. So even if you did come to the funeral, my deceased mom wouldn't be happy." I can't believe this. My chest hurt as the harsh truth hit me. Seeing my reaction, my husband sighed in annoyance. "Enough already. If Mom hated you, Dad feels the same. Your presence would just make everyone uncomfortable." "Fine, I get it. Just stop," I said, feeling defeated. "Good, don't come to the funeral," he said, pressured by my husband. All I could do was nod. 2 days later, early in the morning, my husband was busily getting ready, quickly putting on his clothes. When he went to the bathroom, I picked up his discarded pajamas. That's when I noticed his phone left open on the table. It looked like he had been checking out the venue for today. The driving directions were up on the screen. It was about a 40-minute drive from home. Something felt off. Wait, something's not right. That direction isn't toward William's family home. It would take at least an hour and a half to get there from his parents' house. Why would they choose a location so far away? Caught up in these thoughts, my husband returned from the bathroom. Having finished setting his hair, I quickly moved away, pajamas in hand, making sure he didn't notice I'd seen his phone. He said, "I'm leaving," and walked out the door. Still feeling uneasy, I decided to attend my mother-in-law's funeral, dressed in mourning clothes. When I arrived, I couldn't believe my eyes. The seats for the family and staff were filled with unfamiliar faces, and there was my husband, giving a speech as the chief mourner. "Thank you all for gathering here today in honor of my wife," he said. "My wife, Riley?" I watched in shock as William shed tears, pretending to be a grieving husband. Normally, I would have confronted him right away, but I couldn't bring myself to break the solemn atmosphere. Just then, I overheard a conversation between some women sitting behind me. "Did you hear? The chief mourner is divorced." "Really? He seems so steady." "Yeah, his previous wife was a handful. You know, apparently, she left him with a huge debt. That's troublesome." Finally, she left the divorce papers and walked out. He met his current wife soon after, even knowing she was sick and wouldn't live long. They got married because they were in love. So it's a love story. Huh? Debt? Leaving? I had never done any such thing. Anger boiled inside me as I realized the story had been twisted. I had to check for myself. Upon investigation, I discovered that our divorce had been finalized about 6 months ago. My husband probably met his now sick wife soon after our divorce and married her. The reason he hardly came home was that he was living a newlywed life with her. As I connected the dots, my anger reached its peak. He had me removed from the family register and married another woman behind my back. Enough with the insults already, this was it. I'd had enough. It was time for reckoning. With revenge in mind, I hailed a taxi and headed straight for my mother-in-law's place, where I suspected she'd be. I directed the driver as best as I could remember, and somehow, we made it. I rang the doorbell, and with a cheerful hello, my lively mother-in-law appeared. Her eyes widened as soon as she saw me. "Oh my, Sophia, is that you? Long time no see," she exclaimed. "Mother-in-law, you look well. You look good too." "Sophia, What brings you here? I came unannounced. But there's something urgent I need to talk to you about, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Something you have to tell me? Yes, of course. I told my mother-in-law everything that had happened, how I'd been mistreated by my husband, how I wasn't getting enough for living expenses, and even the fact that he had already divorced me. As I spoke, tears welled up, and I began to sob. My mother-in-law gently rubbed my back to comfort me. Sophia, I'm so sorry you've had to go through all this. My idiot son. Please forgive me. It's okay. I should apologize for showing up and talking about this. Why didn't you come to me sooner? William told me you didn't like me. What? He told me you didn't like me, I replied, finally realizing what had been going on. It hit me then. My mother-in-law and I had been deliberately kept apart. My husband probably thought it would be troublesome if she and I got along, especially if it went against his plans. Meanwhile, without my knowledge, he'd apparently asked his family for financial help multiple times, blaming it all on me. Sophia's sick and needs money, he'd say. Sophia can't work, so things are tight. Please help, for Sophia's sake, and so on. But I was neither sick nor unable to work, it was just what William had told me to do. Now that I knew the truth, I felt a mix of relief and rage. I had nothing to lose anymore. Fighting my fear, I shared my plan for revenge with my mother-in-law and decided to return to the funeral. Although the service had ended, a few people were still around. I approached one of them and asked, "Excuse me, do you know where the deceased's family lives? I couldn't make it to the funeral, and I want to bring some flowers later." Pretending to be an acquaintance, I managed to get the address of my husband's mistress's family home. The next day, I took some funeral flowers and headed to their place. When I rang the doorbell, a woman who looked quite worn, probably from the grief of losing her daughter, answered. It was likely the mistress's mother. I introduced myself as a friend and was invited inside. Once led to the room with the family altar, I saw my husband there. "Sophia, what are you doing here?" he exclaimed. As soon as he said my name, my husband quickly covered his mouth. The father of the mistress turned to William and asked, "What's going on?" That's when I let it all out. "I'm sorry for lying. I am this man's ex-wife." "Ex-wife? Why would you be here?" the father asked, confused. "Your daughter and I were both deceived by this man," I began, my voice trembling with emotion. "I found out just yesterday, at Riley's funeral, that I was divorced." What does that mean?" Riley's father asked, now visibly angry. "He told me it was my mother-in-law's funeral and told me not to come. I suspected something was off, so I followed him, only to find out it was the funeral of his new wife," I explained. "What's the meaning of this, William? Explain yourself," Riley's father demanded. At the sound of his furious voice, William's face turned pale, and he looked down, unable to meet anyone's eyes. The atmosphere, once heavy with sorrow, shifted dramatically as the truth began to unfold. As if sensing his wrongdoing, Riley's father's face turned beet red, and his body trembled with anger. Amidst all this, I prepared to execute my final act of revenge. Just then, the doorbell rang, and Riley's mother went to answer it. When she returned, she was accompanied by my mother-in-law. "Mom," William stammered, sweat breaking out on his forehead as he visibly shook. My mother-in-law didn't waste any time. She proceeded to give him a piece of her mind. "Causing trouble for others, what do you think you're doing? Pay back the money you borrowed from us right now, and don't you dare blame Sophia," she scolded. "Wait, Mom, this is not the time to. You owe an apology to Sophia, to that woman, and even to your parents right here, right now. Do you even understand what you've done? Declaring me dead and removing Sophia from the family registry, that's the height of disrespect. Mom, can we talk about this later? This isn't the place to." "That's exactly why it's the right place. It would be unfair to the other woman and your parents if I didn't say something. I'm here to make sure everyone knows what a loser you are," my mother-in-law declared. Riley's father, now enraged, grabbed William by the collar and shouted, "You've got to be kidding me." Terrified, William started to cry on the spot. It turned out that William had lied to Riley's father about needing money for Riley and had borrowed from him. Upon questioning, it was revealed that William had gambled away all the money. In the end, William was kicked out of Riley's house and faced legal actions. Ignoring his tearful face, I turned my back with my mother-in-law and started to walk away. But just then, a desperate voice called out from behind. Wait, Sophia. I turned around slowly. What? I asked. I'm really sorry, can we start over? He pleaded. Excuse me? I said, incredulous. If you don't help me, I'll be sued, he cried. Don't worry, I plan on suing you too, I replied calmly. What? He stammered, shocked. I had already made up my mind. After all the unfair treatment and the fake divorce papers, I was determined to take legal action. Please forgive me, he begged. But I was fuming. I unleashed all my pent-up emotions on him. Do you think saying sorry will make everything okay? Do you even understand what you've done? Filing for divorce without telling me is illegal. Your apologies are worthless because you've been lying and manipulating people for money. Utterly worthless, I said, my voice rising. Sophia, please, wait, he pleaded again. Quiet, I snapped. Do you have any idea how many people you've hurt with your actions? What you've done isn't something that can be easily forgiven. Even a lifetime of making amends won't be enough. So from now on, stay out of my life. If you show up again, I won't hesitate to ruin you. As I spoke assertively, my mother-in-law gently touched my back, her warmth almost bringing me to tears. In the end, William had to pay back the $10,000 he borrowed from Riley's father in one lump sum. Additionally, he had to pay me alimony and a fine for forgery. His salary was never that high to begin with, so the financial hit hurt him badly. He even had to go into debt to pay the alimony, and now he's getting collection calls at work. It's only a matter of time before he loses his job. As for me, I went back to my old job right after the divorce. Now, I'm living in an apartment near my workplace and enjoying peaceful days. Since then, I've been meeting with my mother-in-law regularly, updating each other on our lives. Our relationship has deepened even more after the divorce. My mother-in-law, who stood by me as we confronted her own son, has become like a second mother to me, and I plan to cherish her as such from now on.